Name is Gary Klein. I was born in 1946.
My name is Sheila Scott Poindexter. I was born on May 29, 1945.
Basically, I was a rehab counselor for special education students for most of my life, and I retired as a rehab consultant in 1970.
I grew up mainly in New York. I was actually born here in Virginia in the Naval Hospital, but my mom and dad broke up, and Mom wanted to go to nursing school, so we moved to New York because she found out about a nursing program in a big hospital up there.
Where did you grow up?
Basically in Amelia Courthouse in Virginia and in Portsmouth, Virginia, in the Tidewater area for most of my life.
What do you believe was the most important part of the 60s?
Well, there was two factors that I remember most. Of course, one of them was the Vietnam War. The other one was the Civil Rights Movement. They were the big issues in the 60s. There was also a big movement socially in music with the Beatles, Woodstock in particular, and a lot of the music groups that were in that era.
What do you believe was the most important part of the 60s?
It was just so full of, to me, emotions. You know, growing up in New York, and my first job was in Manhattan, and there were like petitions all over the street. Stop the war in Vietnam, you know. That was a big thing, you know. I knew that I wasn't happy with it, but I didn't know all the details until several years later. And I read a book where the whole thing was because of rubber. We wanted to get the rubber from Vietnam. Did you hear that too? And I said, what a reason to send men over there, men and women. A lot of people don't realize there were women over there and they got killed too. In fact, there's a memorial for them in Washington now. And I had a very dear friend who was over there, and her experience was nobody should have those kinds of experience. My husband, my ex-husband, was over there as well, and they both told me some horrific things that happened while they were over there. But they both did their duty. That's what they were told to do, and even though they, you know, didn't like a lot of the things. And my second husband was, let's see, no, he wasn't over there when they pulled out, but that broke his heart. Because while he was there, he learned the language, he learned a lot about the culture and the people. And they were begging, some of them, those Vietnamese that were friends of the Americans, begging to please take them. They wanted to go on the planes to leave. And not only that, afterwards, so many children and adults were killed from the mines that were left in the fields and the rice paddies. And I remember my husband saying that women over there, because when I was pregnant, you know, he was telling me, you got it easy. Women over there would go out in the rice paddies and do their work for the rice and have the baby and get up and go back in the rice paddies. I said, I don't think so. I'm glad I'm in America.
What was your opinion on the Vietnam War in general?
I was drafted to go to the Vietnam War. That's where I would have gone. I wasn't in favor of it. I didn't think it was a committed war. I think there was a lot of lives lost, useless. There were times when the United States went in there with troops to take a hill. Once they got it, they moved back, and the Viet Cong moved back in. It was just, to me, it was a waste of life.
Do you still hold this opinion?
I do.
I know you said your ex-husband went over there.
Yes.
So what effects did the Vietnam War have on your family?
Yes, he was very much affected with PTSD. He was also exposed to Agent Orange because he was a paratrooper, and once he was on the ground, he was a point man. So he was right in all that Agent Orange stuff. And it has since given him a lot of side effects. He had 2 heart attacks. He had prostate cancer. They caught it in time. Thank goodness the VA was really good to him. I have to say they made a lot of mistakes with a lot of guys, but they were really good to him and caught his everything that he was that the side effects. They caught it in time. So thank God. I'm thankful for that. And my friend, the lady friend that was a vet over there, she told me a story that I wouldn't have traded places with her. She was a medic nurse, and they were told that they would have to evacuate their team, the whole team, the patients and everybody, like a mass unit like you see on TV. And then it started getting dark and they hadn't gotten everybody out. They got the most disabled ones out on the helicopters. And the nurses had to take those that could walk out into the rice paddy and spend the night so they would be safe until the next morning when the helicopters could get back in, because they couldn't come in after dark. Viet Cong would have, you know. And so she spent the night in the rice paddy, things crawling around, not knowing where the Viet Cong were, you know. And I don't think she ever got over that. I'm sure she had PTSD as well. And that's enough of that one.
One of my questions here is, what would have been your first reaction if you were picked for the draft? But since you were picked, you said, what was your first reaction?
Well, I would have gone. I was rejected by 4F. I have scoliosis, curvature of the spine, and they pulled me out, took x-rays, and said I wasn't qualified for the military. Had I been capable, I would have gone. I wouldn't have gone in good favor, let's put it that way. I believe in the country. I believe basically in what it stands for, but I don't like some of the politics that get me involved where I have to go give my life and the government's not committed to give me the full benefit and the full support to do my job. That was my feeling, and it's my feeling today.
What did you think of the people fleeing to go to Canada to avoid service?
I can understand why they did it. Basically, it was the same feeling that I had. I didn't want to go. I would have gone. I believe in the country, and I don't think it was the right move for them to make. I think the country has given everybody more than we could ask for, and so I think we ought to defend it. I would expect more from our politicians and from our government to support those people, so I can understand why they did it. I don't agree with it.
How did the fall of Saigon affect you?
It broke my heart in a lot of ways because of what happened to the Vietnam that were friendly to the Americans, you know, that, and the fact that we lost so many men over there, and women, as I said, for what, you know? And then to just say, okay, that's enough, go home. That's basically what happened, in my opinion. You know, that's what happened. And after hearing so many stories from different Vietnam vets, you know, they were heartbroken as well because they wanted to finish it and do it right, and they didn't have the support. So, but it was over, and in one way I took a deep breath. I was glad we didn't have to send anybody else back over there.
How did the fall of Saigon affect you?
I thought it was a major fiasco, and I thought it was a failure for the government. And I think again it falls back on it wasn't support of the effort they put over there. It wasn't the support for the hundreds of thousands of guys that lost their lives for it. And so I just thought it was a poor government decision.
Do you believe in the domino theory?
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you have the same feeling towards Vietnam as you do Korea?
In some sorts. I believe if you go to war, you're sacrificing lives, that you ought to support those troops that are going in there to fight for. And I don't agree with the result of either one of those wars. Personally, I wouldn't want to put my life on line. If I'm gonna give up my life, the government ought to support that. And it didn't do it in either case. So yeah, I support the troops that went over there, but I don't believe that the government backed it.
Did you witness any acts of segregation growing up?
Oh yes, I had a time period when my grandmother got sick in North Carolina. My mother moved us back there. And I never heard of some of the racial things in New York, I didn't know. And my mother didn't even think to explain to me, the dangers of certain things. My grandmother sent me into town, which wasn't that far. It was a good walk, but I was young, to pay a bill. And it was hot, it was summertime. I saw this park and I saw a water fountain. And I shot up the hill, I looked around, shot up the hill and got some water, the best water I ever tasted. And I went home and told my grandmother rather, because by then I knew there was places for minorities and places for whites. And we were mixed, but we were still considered minorities. In my family, it's black, white, and Native American. But my grandmother, I was so proud of myself that I didn't get caught. I went home and said, Grandma, guess what I did? And she took her belt and she whaled me good. She said, don't you ever do that again. You could have gotten us all killed. I didn't understand that. I didn't know it was that dangerous, And one of her neighbors, it was either shortly before or shortly after that said the wrong thing to somebody, and a white person. And they burned a cross in her yard. Luckily, they didn't burn her. So my grandmother tried to help me to understand that I guess to put fear in me so I wouldn't make mistakes again, But I saw how adult males and females were treated like children. Basically they had there was no respect, and the minorities, Native Americans that lived out on the reservation didn't even like coming into the town where I lived because they couldn't deal with it, so that's, my story. That's part of it that I remember anyway. We didn't stay there too long, thank goodness. We went back to New York.
Did you witness any acts of segregation growing up?
Oh yeah. I was up in D.C. With a girlfriend of mine, and they had all their reactions, whatever. And I understand their standpoint. I agreed to it to a certain point. We're all entitled to our rights. Some of those times when they did in some of those demonstrations where they started breaking up property, other people's property. I believe in your belief. You can demonstrate for it, but when you start destroying other property, that's a criminal reaction. I don't agree with that part. I agree with the part that, yeah, they deserve their rights.
Did civil rights protests occur where you lived?
Oh, in New York? Oh, definitely. Yes, quite a few.
Did you partake in any of them?
I didn't, because at that time, I got married when I was 19, and I had a child by the time I was 20. I had to grow up. I knew I couldn't do a lot of the things that my friends did, and that was one of them, be involved in a protest. My heart was there with them, but then I didn't like some of the things that people did, like out in Michigan, I think Detroit, and come to think of it, in Harlem, in New York. There were riots and rock throwing, breaking windows and all that kind of stuff. I didn't think that was necessary. That was not getting a good point across. It was a negativity,
What was your opinion on Martin Luther King Jr.?
I thought it was good for the country for Martin Luther King. I wish there would have been more that we could have unified the country with. I think the assassination of him really hurt the country. A lot of people didn't like his reactions, but they were fighting for their rights, and I can understand it. It's America. Everybody's entitled to be equal in their rights. Everybody has their rights. And so when you start infringing on other people's rights, I don't think it's right, whether you're black, white, red, whatever.
What was your opinion on Martin Luther King Jr.?
I thought he was wonderful. When I heard his speech, I had a dream. I just really, he was absolutely wonderful. He was he wanted a peaceful integration, you know, and I thought that was the way to go. I really did.
What was your opinion when he was killed?
I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken. Because I knew how much respect he had gained from not just minorities, but whites, political leaders, wealthy people, you know. He was respected and loved by many, many people. And I just couldn't believe it.
Did you ever see any of Martin Luther King's talks on TV, or did you happen to see him in person?
Never saw him in person. Saw a lot of his speeches and what he said. A lot of them were very truthful and very meaningful, and I thought they were very powerful.
Do you remember where you were when you found out JFK was assassinated?
I was at work, my first job, and I happened to be put in a group. Well, there was 2 ladies and I, and one of them was pregnant, and we had a specific job that we had to take care of. And when we heard it, I thought this lady was going to have a baby. She scared the daylights out of us. I just loved him so much and respected him. And Jackie, you know, all girls loved Jackie Onassis Kennedy at the time. She set sort of a fashion standard for us. She showed us what it was like to be a wife of a very important man. You know, she just was they both were a wonderful family couple. Some of the things that he brought a new life to the country, in my opinion. He just, he was young, he was Catholic, which we had never had a Catholic president. He's from a big family. His father, some people thought differently about his father, but he was very wealthy. He made his money out of liquor, to tell you the truth. And but anyway, he raised some wonderful children, you know, and gave us one of the best presidents, in my opinion, that we ever had. Just so sorry that he had to die so tragically.
Do you remember where you were when you found out JFK was assassinated?
I do. I was in the 6th grade algebra class when I heard about it.
How did you take the news? What was your first reaction?
I was shocked. I thought JFK was good. I liked him as a president for what, at that time I could remember what politics were about. But I liked what he did in the Cuban crisis and stuff like that. So yeah, it was heartfelt when he was assassinated.
How did the news affect your view of the future of American society?
After he died, when he got killed, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what direction the nation would go in. I was hoping that we would still pull together like he had brought so many of us together in so many different ways. It was like insecurity, so to speak, not knowing which way we were going to go or how it was going to affect our country for the future, you know, that kind of thing. Just a sadness in general. But that's a female too, that's my... But anyway, he was wonderful.
Did you lose any hope for the future of America, or did it change your view on American society?
When he was assassinated,
Yes, sir.
I didn't think it was good for the country. I wasn't really happy with the leadership after that, but I didn't lose hope in the country. I still felt like there was a direction with politics in that area. Although that was a beginning stage of when I started getting political minded and started listening to it more and more, where I made my decisions based on what the candidates were based on. Yeah, I still had hope in the country, and I still do now.
In the 1968 election, Nixon versus Humphrey, who did your family support?
I'm pretty sure we wanted Humphrey. My grandmother, she was the politician in the family, and she never liked Nixon, never liked him. And I guess she kind of rubbed off on me, you know. As I was older though, then I could see things in him that I didn't like, especially, well, I guess you're gonna talk about Watergate, yeah.
In the 1968 election, Nixon versus Humphrey, who did your family support?
Humphreys, my family supported.
Why did you support this candidate?
Well, I thought he would be the better candidate, to be honest with you.
Would you choose them again today?
I don't know that I would. I may have made the wrong decision at that particular time. But, you know, either one would have probably made a bad mistake. I think Johnson made some bad mistakes, and I think Humphrey would have probably made bad mistakes as well.
What was your opinion of the Watergate scandal?
It was awful, just awful. It was an embarrassment for this country, this great country, for the world to see our leader, our president, lower himself like that. And it was just almost, well, I won't go into today's politics, but it was an embarrassment, yeah, in front of the world.
What is your opinion on the Watergate scandal?
Well, I thought it was one of those big mistakes. I mean, it was a cover-up by the government. I understand that, and it was really a blight on the country because he did it. It resulted in the president having to resign, and I think it was just a dumb thing to happen.
What was your first reaction after Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated?
Oh, I cried. I was in my kitchen making dinner, and the news was on, and I heard it, and I don't even know if I finished dinner. I can't remember. It was just such a tragedy after losing his brother, and then putting hope in him, and seeing the future again for our nation, you know. That was just heartbreaking. I remember the next day on the news, people would say, you know, if you don't have to go to work, don't go, out of respect for him. And if you do, put your car lights on. So everywhere, I didn't go to work, but I did look out and I saw car lights everywhere, you know.
What was your first reaction after Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated?
Well, it was another shock. I've actually been to the hotel where he was shot in California, and when I was back there, years after it happened, of course, it was still depressing to go back there and see where I think he would have been a good president. You know, he was pretty opinionated, and I think he probably made a lot of decisions when John F. Kennedy was president. And so I think he was more opinionated, would make more actions quicker. So yeah, it was a disappointment when he was killed.
What did you think about the space race?
Thought it was wonderful. I was so excited because, well, when I was younger, I loved Buck Rogers. And this was for real. This was not Buck Rogers. This was actually happening. My thought was, gosh, it would be nice if I could be the first woman to go, you know. But of course I wasn't, and I didn't even like science that much. But it was just a wonderful feeling to know that we did this in spite of Russia, because when I was a little girl, especially in New York, we used to have like air raid practices, and when the sirens would go off, we had to duck under our desk in school. And it was a fear that had been put in me because of that. And I hate to say it, but it was a dislike for the Russians, you know. And so I was so proud of our nation that we went up and did what we did in outer space. And in a way, to me, we beat Russia in that regard, you know, at that time. The way I understood it, you know. But that was a long time ago. I'm an old lady now.
What did you think about the space race?
Well, I think the space race is good. I think it's helped. A lot of the developments that we had, or we have, is because of the space race. Of course, the Russians with Sputnik jarred it all, and I think it was a good thing that we did that. It was advantage to us to have it done.
What was the reaction to the moon landing? Did it give you a sense of patriotism?
Yeah, I was happy about it. John F. Kennedy said, we're going to beat them to the moon, and we did. And you're always happy when you win the race,
Yes, sir. Has your opinion of Russia changed?
No. In fact, it had mellowed a little bit, but not anymore. With what's going on over there now, what's going on with our current president, and supposedly, I'm not saying he does, but supposedly his connection with Putin, and I just have no respect for Putin or Russia or several other countries. I don't trust. There's no trust there anymore.
What were your opinions on the Cold War?
Well, obviously you don't like to have a Cold War. I mean, there was a lot of threats going on. I think in the long run, I think we kind of waited out the Russians a little bit. At that particular time, Khrushchev was making a lot of allegations about us, and it was a very traumatic time for everybody. Everybody was afraid. Coming down even to the Cuban crisis and that sort of stuff, and with missiles and everything else.
Did you watch the Olympics growing up? Did you consider this an extension of the Cold War?
Well, I did watch it, to answer your question. I didn't necessarily look at it that way, but it's always been a political situation going about when Germany had them and they thought they were the superior race. Jesse Owens came in there and he made a big statement by winning, showing that the blacks could beat the whites, of course. So I think there's always something political in most of those activities involved.
What types of music interested you at the time?
Oh, well, after my first husband and I broke up, I was considered the disco queen. But disco was later, no. But in the 60s, I'll never forget this. I was about 6 months pregnant, and my mother-in-law's best friend had a young son. I think he was 14, and she had gotten tickets for him and her and her husband to go see the Beatles. This was their first concert in Shea Stadium. And they begged us, my husband and I, you're younger, you can go, and we can't take that music, So my husband and I, we were excited because the Beatles, they were it, And so we went, oh my gosh, you could not hear the screaming girls and everything, but it was just a moment in history that I'll never forget, So I enjoyed the Beatles. I enjoyed, the Supremes. No, wait, were they in the 60s? In the late 60s, I think, the Supremes. I just loved our rock and roll is what we called it, And I really, really liked our rock and roll back then. I thought we had, to be quite honest, the best music. Of course, my mother was from the big band era, And I grew up with listening to that, and I have a great respect for it even today, But our rock and roll was unbelievable. It was good.
What types of music interested you during the 60s?
Oh my goodness. I listened to the Doors, Jefferson Airplanes, Jimi Hendrix, Moody Blues, all those groups. Uriah Heep at one point. So I listened to some of the hard rock. I listened to the new rock. The Kinks all came in. At that particular time, I was experimenting with it. And I liked the music back at that time.
What was your favorite artist growing up?
Oh my goodness. My favorite. Oh, that's easy. What am I doing? Because I was in the fan club in high school. Johnny Mathis. Every girl loved Johnny Mathis. His music was so romantic, And yeah, Johnny Mathis, I have to say.
What was your favorite artist while you were growing up? Are they still your favorite today?
That's hard to say. I like the Doors. I like their music. I love Jimi Hendrix. Actually, I got to see Jimi Hendrix in Virginia Beach when they had the Dome. Now, that's dating my age right there. I hate to even talk about that. But I like that sort of music. It was new. Of course, mother and father didn't like them. I mean, I like the Beatles. They didn't even like the Beatles. So, the Rolling Stones and stuff like that, they thought I was radical about liking that kind of music. But yeah, I like that kind of music. Do you know what today is, by any chance?
To today's date?
Yeah,
August 15th.
yeah. You know what happened on today's date 50 years ago? Woodstock.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was 50 years ago today that the Woodstock started. And that changes the whole music perspective and culture in the United States.
So in the book we read, called Boom by Tom Brokaw, it's full of primary sources from the 60s, and they share different perspectives of different events. One primary source that caught my attention was Mr. James Webb. He was a Marine lieutenant in Vietnam in 1969, and he went on to serve as Secretary of the Navy and then serve in the US Senate. However, you cannot forget the times he had in Vietnam. First of all, does this name sound familiar to you?
I'm not overly familiar. I remember him. I don't remember it well.
Some say that his actions in Vietnam, along with his soldiers, were completely pointless. He disagrees with this and defends his actions. What do you think?
Let's put it this way. I agree with you that nobody's actions over Vietnam was pointless because everybody had that commitment to do what they were commanded to do. They were commanded to take orders and they did it, so it's not pointless. What's pointless is the government didn't support those actions. So in that point, it was useless because they were just using manpower, lives for politics. And I don't think war should be fought that way. It wasn't fought that way in World War I or World War II. And we know the atrocities that happened in Germany, Japan. And so there's war, you go in, you go to win. I mean, that's what it is. You don't go there to sacrifice your country's men and lives for their political gain. That's my opinion.